Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of Sales TV. We like to think of this as like a friendly home for salespeople. So this is going to be a weekly live stream for salespeople, sales managers, sales enablement professionals, revops leaders, because there isn't anything like this out there at the moment. I think it's fair to say that sales is a pretty tough profession to be in. It always has been, particularly at the moment. There are stats like only 20% of sellers make their number. The average tenure of a salesperson is less than 15 months. It's a tough place to be. Sales leadership keep piling on pressure, and the message is always more. Make more pipeline, make more calls, send more emails, go to more events, do more events. It's a tough place to be, and generating those opportunities is a difficult thing for salespeople to do, particularly in this new environment. And it seems to me that there's little in terms of support for salespeople in order to achieve this. Yes, they've got training and all of that sort of thing, but there's little practical help in terms of here are some things that you can do to go and generate more conversations or go and generate more pipeline. And let's be honest, sales is a tough thing to be in from a mental health perspective. The challenge is that you spend your entire life phoning people who don't want to speak to you, having the phone put down, emails not being responded to. And that must weigh heavily on the mental health of salespeople. And that may well be driving part of the story around why people don't tend to stay in sales roles for a long time. And it's that relentless stream of no's and that constant feeling of banging your head against a wall is why we decided to set up Sales TV. So this is a place for salespeople to come and listen, to share their stories, to hear some unbiased advice. This is not a sales pitch, but this is about sharing the latest thinking that we found and the latest solutions to tackling these problems, and also hopefully a place where you can feel that you're part of your tribe. So welcome to Sales TV. So let's just introduce ourselves. Let's start with you, Alex, seeing as you're in the top corner of the show.
Thank you, Adam. Good morning, all. My name's Alex Abbott, founder of Sapiro. We're a B2B sales consultancy. A little bit about me. So 23 years experience in sort of B2B corporate sales, now running my own consultancy, very much focusing on social and value selling and helping to empower individuals to be better salespeople.
Fantastic. Tim.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called DLA Ignite. I've written 3 books on sales. My current one, which is over my shoulder, wherever it is Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Fantastic. Andy.
So, been in IT sales and financial services sales for 15 years. Andy Huff. I founded the Association of Professional Sales, another kind of home and tribe to try and put sales on parity with other professions. And that's morphed into the Institute of Sales Professionals, and I'm now lecturing at Cranfield University in sales leadership and performance. And really delighted that we're going to be doing this kind of weekly kind of just chilled chat around some of the things that are going on in sales and offering up a few possible kind of ideas and solutions for people out there.
Fantastic. So thank you. Oh, and now I'm Adam Gray. I'm also from DLA Ignite. I'm Tim's business partner and co-founder of the business. So who would like to kick off with something that's playing on their mind or something that they would like to share? I mean, as you can imagine, I've got loads of things, but I'll give you guys the chance first.
I'm happy to, but equally...
Go on then, Alex.
So I wanted to sort of maybe set the scene a little bit in terms of, and somewhat adding to your intro, Adam, but when we think about how buyer behavior has changed over the last decade or more, I'd say, even more so in the last couple of years, and how that's having an impact on businesses' ability to generate new pipeline, new conversations, coupled with the economic uncertainty that we find ourselves in, and the effect that that's having on purchase decisions and then being delayed, and that having a knock-on effect with, you know, with businesses and close rates of salespeople. There seems to be, and having attended a couple of sales enablement events recently, the topic of discussion seems to be sales productivity. And what are the things that should be measured? What are the behaviours that should be tracked to improve sales productivity? So I wanted to kind of open that up as a bit of a discussion point. You know, what are those things that sales enablement leaders, business leaders should be measuring to ensure that they're improving sales productivity, as opposed to having a negative effect? I'll give you an example. So speaking with a head of enablement at a software company recently, they're going through an exercise to try and understand sales rep fitness. So looking at quite a long list of all of the things that salespeople do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and score them on how well they are at doing those things. And then that gives them a sales rep fitness score. And it kind of struck me that there's a lot of things on that list that, you know, aren't the kind of things that a high performing sales rep would want to do regularly, like the dreaded account plan for every account, not just the accounts you want to focus on, for example.
Updating the CRM.
Updating the CRM.
I think that's fascinating. I think we measure a lot of things in sales, not necessarily the right things. I read a book by Sean Aker recently. It's called The Happiness Advantage. It's on Audible. And the reason I look at that, Alex, is I don't know if anybody heard Adam Peaty talking on BBC this morning. And he was basically just saying, I've taken time out of swimming for my mental health. And Adam, this comes back to your viewpoint about, you know, under pressure a lot of the time. And he said, listen, I've struggled all my life, and I thought winning a gold medal would sort it. You know, I'm not very happy. Don't worry, I'll jump in a pool, get to an Olympics, win gold medal, job done, happy. And he went, it never did. It never sorted it. And that's that really interesting thing. We measure salespeople against a performance metric and just naturally assume that once they've achieved it or not, then that makes happiness, and it doesn't. It's actually how people are feeling in themselves that actually then bears and has a bearing on performance. So I think, you know, to the point there, Alex, is we measure salespeople on tons and tons of stuff, and they like to perceive that they are the most measured within an organization. And I look at it and go, you know what? We're measuring all the wrong things. And we should be measuring well-being. We should be measuring mental health. We should be measuring happiness. Because those things, A, are important to human beings, and B, you know, science has said if you have those things, you're probably going to be performing better.
Yeah,
I think it's a really good point, Andy, and I think that you know, in terms of the way that I think we've all been measured in the past, it is all based on performance. But then also what happens is that we're looking at, you know, we can't get enough people, or the people are leaving, or you know, those sort of things. And of course, then we go back to our checklist of things to measure. And you're right. It's the discussion about mental health in sales really, for me, has only just seemed to have picked up in the last couple of months. And I had a real aha moment with it. It was just like, what, you know, some of the jobs in sales are pretty rubbish.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, if you think about a classic SDR role, you know, sales development rep, where you're having to try and get leads on a daily basis and go out and talk to new people, you know, from an early age, we're told never to talk to strangers. So we're going against, you know, some of our natural reactions, and we're measuring those things. And it must be, it's, you know, when I started cold calling, it didn't really matter, because it was a different age. You know, it was 1,000 years ago when I started. So, but mental health is so important. And Alex, you wear a mental health badge, don't you?
I do. So it was Mental Health Week a couple of weeks ago, but I've decided that I'm going to wear it every day. Hopefully I don't lose it. It's been in the wash a couple of times already.
You can hear it go clank, clank, clank around the washing machine.
But I think it is really important, and I think that we've got two things going on here. We've got your well-being and joy that you get from doing your job. So are you doing things that give you pleasure? And I think that a great example of that is your son that came to work with us for a while, and previously he's doing a job, and it was a soulless job. You know, he was hitting the phones, hitting the emails, and he was getting one call a week with people. So 95% of his time was being told, no, I don't want to talk to you. And then he does a different series of activities, and half of his week is then spent talking to people that actually want to talk to him. And it's like, oh my God, I never realized this could be such good fun and so rewarding. So I think that that's a really crucial cornerstone of this, but also measuring the things that matter and being objective about what works and what doesn't work. So it's all very well to say to somebody, okay, so previously we've had activity A, and I don't want to be bashing any particular activity, but previously we've had activity A, and there's been a really strong correlation between the number of activity A's that you do and the amount of results that you get. And the problem is that we've often slipped into this kind of abyss of then measuring the output rather than the results of the output. So I'm going to measure you on doing more and more of this stuff. And if that stuff isn't actually relevant or isn't working or is positioned in the wrong way or going out to the wrong people, then that stuff is not going to deliver results. So if I'm asking you to do more and more and more of it, it actually isn't going to impact the results that we have.
Yeah.
A lot of the challenge surely must be in saying, I'm going to measure you not on how many calls you make or how many doors you knock on or how many emails, but on how many conversations you have or how many sales you have. And that's the primary thing. And if you're doing lots of activity A and it isn't delivering that result, then we need to say, okay, where is this process breaking down? Because something's going wrong.
Yeah. So I feel quite strongly about this. There's this world between lag measures and lead measures. And, for those that might be listening, what's a lag measure? What's a lead measure? Well, for me, a lag measure is the end result. It's the revenue, it's the sale, it's the number of opportunities. It's the outcome that you're driving towards, things that you can't necessarily influence unless you do 101 things before that. The lead measures for me are the behaviors that the sales rep does on a daily basis, a behavior that increases the probability to get to or get closer to the conversation, the opportunity, the closed deal. And often I hear people and even companies, large companies on earnings calls talk about lead measures, but they're still really lag measures. For me, the lead measure has to be the thing, so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a piece of content. I'm going to publish that so my network sees that. Lead measure, because I can control that. I can influence that. Tomorrow, I'm going to see who's engaged with that piece of content, and I'm going to follow up with them and say, thank you. Another lead measure increases the level of engagement. And I think it's identifying those and measuring those that will ensure that we're able to not only track the right behaviors, but coach our reps more effectively than telling them you need to do more conversations. You need to have a 5x in pipeline.
Absolutely. But isn't part of the problem the fact that in people's minds, these two things are not connected? So a while ago, Tim shared a report from McKinsey on our kind of internal network, and it typifies one of my pet hates. So it tells people a series of platitudes and abstract things, but it doesn't tell them how to achieve those. So one of the outputs of this report was 3 out of 4 outperformers applied table stakes analytics such as sales planning. Well, yeah, duh, of course they do. But how do you do that? And that's the point, isn't it? The point is, you need to be friendly and approachable. Well, I get that. I get why that's attractive to people. How can you appear to be friendly and approachable? And I think that something that is so often missing is people are told these abstract concepts, and we all get those abstract concepts. But when somebody says, now do something concrete with that abstract concept, people go, well, what am I supposed to say? So, what are the words that you're going to use? What's a lexicon of terms that you can say that engages people, that is friendly rather than standoffish or abrasive? How can you approach people? And it's not about saying, well, you just simply strike up a conversation with them. All right. How? How do you strike up in this new world with these new tools? How do you strike up a conversation with somebody? And I think that until we put those pieces in place, you're asking salespeople to bake a cake. There are the ingredients. And if you don't give them a recipe, what they end up with is a brick.
You've seen my cooking.
Amy makes the point. Amy Sparks, thank you for commenting. They have no idea how to speak to people.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they, as in salespeople.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that, haven't we? When we've coached team, well, when we've worked with teams and trained them, Tim, and we've plugged one hole in the boat, so people are getting more conversations, and then it turns out that when they've got somebody on a call, they actually don't know what to say. They don't know how to begin to have a conversation with somebody, because they're nowadays in the modern digital world, they're starting the conversation from a different place.
I'd argue that they're not exactly even starting the conversation. I mean, about 15 years ago, I went to a bar with my wife in local in Muswell Hill, and basically a group of young people came. I sound like an old fart now. A group of young people came in, sat around a table, and got their phones out and started texting, and no one talked to each other. And it's like, hang on a minute. And my son, who's 9, shout out to Ollie. He's like, his idea is he wants to be a YouTuber, and we've incentivized him. So he's got his own microphone now. He's got his own phone and stuff like that. And it's like, in the old days, you'd have a chat and you'd talk to people. And my wife grabbed me because I was going to go over and get the phones and just drop them into the pints of beer that they had. But she said, no, it's probably a bit draconian. But the issue is that's where they start from, is this, yes, they can globally collaborate and communicate, and they can game with somebody in Singapore or Chicago. But actually, if I was next to Alex on the tube, I wouldn't think to want to have a conversation with him. Even say good morning or have a good day. It's an alien thing. And technology has just sped that up. It's now got to a point, I think, what you're chatting about, Adam, is you've got all of these things now that theoretically, to Alex's point, make you more efficient and effective. All it does is speed you up to the point where this has got to be used and these have got to be used. And those humanity skills are sorely lacking, unfortunately.
But isn't there a beautiful irony to the fact that a salesperson's one true superpower, if they have one, is their ability to engage people and have a conversation with them?
Yeah.
So you take a salesperson to your box at the rugby, and the salesperson is the one that is the center of attention. They're chatting to everyone. They're really gregarious. They're really friendly. They're chatting about where the kids go to school and what car they drive and that's their superpower. And yet they're almost ashamed to use that superpower when they go out into the wild.
Yeah,
because they just simply don't know how to apply that super skill.
Is that because what we've seen is this in the past what we had was this great set of industries that put salespeople through an apprenticeship and a process. Yellow Pages, the local free newspaper, which was selling advertising. And what they did was that they had this platform to learn how to use the phone, how to have conversations over the phone. And what has happened is all of that's gone.
Well, all of that, I think all of that has gone. And then you've got businesses trying to script everything. So, I mean, not every business has the luxury of a sales enablement or a sales operations function, but someone coming in is saying, well, I've been successful doing it this way, so we're going to script it. And then those softer skills aren't learned by the new salespeople coming in.
Yeah, I think, Tim, to your point, when I started, and I'm 51, I started in Lloyd's, and they had their management and development centre. They had their own college. I went to Barclays Mercantile. They had their own academy down in Basingstoke, and it was their own training centre. And I remember the training coach, Tim Royds, you go down there 4 or 5 times a year, and the value of taking you off the road was, you're going to learn from a small group of peers. You're going to, learn best practices. But to your point, you're going to develop your style. You're going to develop your business. And I think that's missing now. I don't think salespeople are given the ownership of their bit of the business. So the beauty of it is kind of hidden, and that's why people don't want to go into it anymore. But it's like that's your set of customers. That's your business within this big brand, and that's a great thing to have. Is that safety net of, you can go out there, and when I did, and represent these had these postcodes and represent this really cool brand without the risk of having to do it on your own. And you were scaffolded, to your point, Tim. The apprenticeship concept is literally about scaffolding, coaching, giving you that support network, and then eventually taking those bits away and letting you go out there on your own. And I remember, and it's probably not particularly PC, but our manager, a lovely guy called Steve Pugh, he would basically celebrate mistakes. So he would go and say, the worst sales call I've been on gets a microwavable spotted dick, and you have to have it on your PC for the rest of the week. But he would go, what did you learn? And you learned things, and it was a bit of fun, and you weren't afraid to fail.
Maybe that's a big issue nowadays. Failing is vilified, isn't it? So if you get something wrong, there's all sorts of consequences for that, rather than it being an investment in your learning.
Yeah.
But that's back to the point around 67% of people don't hit goals. So back to mental health. We 1st of January or start of New Year, you didn't meet muster last year, therefore you're not good, and you didn't meet President's Club. Unlucky.
Yeah. So that's a real figure, is it? 67% of people, of salespeople, don't meet their target.
Yeah, most of the data, which is academics would call it grey, because it's not in an academic paper and it's not being collated and collected in an academic way, but it's perfectly acceptable. So HubSpot are really good at collecting this kind of data. Gartner, LinkedIn. So those sources, I'd say, are really validated in terms of they've got the money to go out there and do it, and they've got the access to a lot of people. So to that, about 67% of people don't hit goal. The other one is that about 52% of deals, it was about a couple of years ago, actually end in no deal, end in status quo.
Let's go back to that 67% of salespeople don't meet their goals. So what does that tell us about the environment? Is it because 62% of salespeople are rubbish, or is it because the goals are unrealistic, or is it because they don't have the skills or the tools or the training or the time to tackle the markets that they're expected to? What's the reason for that? Because that's a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Yeah. So I remember many times as a sales leader working for different companies, I would make that calculation myself in terms of, okay, where do I think I'm going to be next year with the conversations that we have running, with what we know our opportunity generation rate is and our close rate is and our average order value. So I'd have a pretty good idea where we would be in the following year. And then finance, or my boss, would come along and say, finance has slapped this target on you. Like, well, that's unrealistic. This is where we're going to end up, plus or minus, several percentage points. So how on earth am I supposed to do that? Well, you just got to accept it. It's finance. For me, that's one of the problems, is that unrealistic.
It's the top down. So you did a bottom up budget, and what they've done is a top down budget.
Yeah.
So how did you address that, Alex?
Well, you it forces you to think even more creatively, and so what else can we do to achieve target? And quite often the marketing budget would have been cut, so it's not as if you could just spend more money, put more in the top. You just got to get more and more creative. Back to your point at the beginning, Adam, about just do more. Given the times, speaking with the sales leader towards the end of last year, his mandate to his team was, we're going to have to deliver 30% more revenue this year with 30% less resources, given the economic crisis and what have you.
So how do we break that cycle? Because that's unrealistic. Because if you're able to deliver 30% more with 30% less, it means you were being lazy last year or ineffective last year. So there's a whole host of, well, if you can do it this year, why didn't you do it last year? And if you're stretched really thin and you're working at capacity this year, then the cost of the product's gone up by 10%, therefore the revenue's going to go up by 10%, given that you're equally effective in selling stuff. But there's a limit to how far you can stretch that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it depends where you are in your life cycle. So there's a lot of high growth companies that are just coming into the market. And I think, if you're doing not a lot in your first year as you entrant, 30% is achievable. But and we will unpack these probably in future episodes and stuff like this. But what I love is that, again, Amy's looked and said this is a pyramid scheme. So what actually happens is the insurance policy. So Tim was saying it's a top-down approach. So somebody sits there and gets, let's call it 1 million as a target to keep it nice and round. They've got 6 regions. The reality is that obviously you put 10% on or 5% on before you give it to 6 regions, and each one of those regions has got 6 leaders so they put another 5 or 10% on, and then they actually pass it down and they put another 5%. So if you actually did in fact, actually I'll do it later today, but it comes out at something like 20% more. So if you sum up the grassroots and then add it back up, there's a 20% differential. So this over-quotering, if it's even a phrase, is a killer. And you can kind of get why you would go, all right, I can see the mathematical logic in this, but it's quite short term. And actually what it does do is, it comes back to how we treat salespeople in the short term. Because what it actually says is, the sustainability of my company is okay because we're going to hit goal. Because if 67% of salespeople don't hit goal, they may well come close to it. They might be 90%, they might be. But I can't think of 67% of corporations who've gone, we've missed our goals this year.
Yeah.
I've seen over-quotering a lot, Andy, in terms of the way it's all passed out. And the thing is that if you take most NASDAQ quoted companies, the important thing is that whatever you quote to the NASDAQ is you get. There's no surprises. So they generally use over-quotering as a way to make sure that, say something happens, you're a global company, say Asia Pac for some reason, doesn't happen. All of that, you're still going to make your number because you've got your over-quotering in North America, South America, and in the UK and Europe.
Yeah,
he's a great guy called Paul Devlin. We should see if we can get him on next week, actually, who scrapped that. And he just went, no manager that I have gets a bonus unless every single person within their team hits 100%. And you don't over-quota, you coach. And he's an inspiration of mine. I think he's brilliant at how he does it and what he's done. So we should get him along because actually his people were happy because they cared.
Okay, so that's a really great jumping off point onto a new thread. We've identified that there is a problem. Salespeople are not happy. Salespeople are under pressure. They're being overquoted. Very few of them are feeling fulfilled because 67% are not achieving their number. So they're not getting the rewards, either financial or by peer recognition for having achieved and done well. So what can people do to change this? If you're a sales manager or a salesperson, what can you do to change this narrative? Because it has to change, doesn't it?
you've got to look at culture, and I think if organisations don't understand now that the problems that have been coming for a few decades in sales are now here to stay, and you have to change the way that you think about you running that ecosystem.
So do they believe that, though? Do they believe these problems are here to stay? Because when we talk to companies in the marketplace, there are some universal threads that we hear. So one of them is we have no pipeline and we have no way of generating more pipeline. And the other one is, well, we're hoping things are going to be better in Q2, 3, 4, whatever. We're seeing green shoots. And actually, those are the companies that when we talk to them in 6 months' time, they say, we've still got no pipeline and no way of generating more pipeline. So how are they going to actually address this?
I think it's a really interesting one. I think it's the people paradigm. I'm passionate. It's a people paradigm. Any technological platform like LinkedIn, and you guys are absolutely super cool on knowing what the hell to do with it, but every company's got access to LinkedIn. Every company's got access to SalesLoft or Salesforce.com. The bit is the human being, and less people want to be in sales. More people are leaving. Great resignations accelerated that. But if you look at some of the work that is being done around universities to measure people's perception of the sales role and whether as a student you want to go into it, nothing's changed in 30 years. In fact, actually, in terms of perception, the stigma and everything else that people perceive in sales, leaders have to then go, actually, that's not how sales is in our organization. We are actually really embracing people, and we want to develop you for the next 20, 30 years, not just for the time that you're with us, so you hit your number this year. We want you to be the best and possible version that you can be and show up in a really different way. And I think there's the attraction, there's the engagement. Assuming every salesperson learns the same way is ridiculous. All salespeople are adults, and there's at least 4 different types of ways that people learn. Tim talked about apprenticeship. That's a great example of induced, right the way through to scanning, which I look at people on this, like Amy and Patrick, who will be scanners, have been looking at their careers for the last 20, 30 years. And so there's those things, Adam, that really need to change. And some leaders in sales are starting to go, if I'm going to have sustainability, I've got to think about these things in a really, really different way. And I've got to think about, the Andy Huff who stayed 16 years in EMC, that unless they go through management, it's never going to happen. They're going to stay in for about 24 months. And so actually, how do I develop that individual so that they leave my academy, they leave my employment with a brand that means when they show up in a different way? And I don't know if you've seen the Simon Sinek, Sales is Like Dating. It's brilliant as a 2.5-minute video, because basically what it says is I'm showing up in a different way. If anything we should pop out after Simon Sinek, Sales is Like Dating, is just the epitome. I'm going to show up to have a conversation with Tim as my customer. I'm going to do it in a different way.
Yeah. So I think, 100% Andy, I think just coming back to what Patrick was saying about the old wooden cart with square wheel syndrome, essentially a company would sooner fire the sales rep as opposed to, changing the model. This notion of the high performing sales rep who's a lone wolf isn't good for our company, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I even remember myself sort of going through, many years ago now, going through this conundrum in my mind that, I was delivering big numbers, yet I wasn't quite conforming to the company way of doing things. And, the need to mold people as opposed to think about hiring and firing is one thing at that high performance level. But at the low performance level, as you, I think, were touching on, Andy, time, as recent as last week, speaking to a company that said if they don't perform within 3 months, they're out.
Yeah, it's and I think that is really old mentality. Yeah, clearly not all people are cut out for the role. But if a platform, you guys know, if you go on and look at the open roles in sales that are advertised on LinkedIn, it's somewhere in the region of it oscillates between about 95,000 and 102. But that's roughly about 10% of the sales force that are in B2B. And you go, therefore, 10% of the roles are open. To your point, Anna, every CEO that I'm talking to today is going, I can't hire. But that's one of those other things that's been going on for decades. It's CFO, global downturn, bang, let's just cut out 20, 30% of the reps. Because when times are good, we'll be able to just go and find them again. There's loads of people. There's a conveyor belt of them. It's like, well, there isn't anymore. So, and I think it's really fascinating that it's about growth mindset, isn't it? It's about people can develop themselves as human beings. People can learn those conversations you were talking about, Adam. We have to create an environment for them to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And think, and to your point, Alex, not read a script. I don't, fine. Yeah, great. Send me something. I'll have a chat with a bot. I want to understand what makes people tick.
Mm. Yeah.
So why do you think that we're in sales, that we're in this situation? If you go onto LinkedIn and read any of the articles that are coming out from people, that there is this view that what we can do with sales is we can move it into a compartment. We can define best practice. A couple of you have used the term yourself, that we can say this is the process that you need to follow, because the view is that if we allow people to think, they make mistakes, and we then can't measure that. So if we get everybody doing exactly the same thing, we know what they're doing, and we can then measure that, and we're then in this situation that we know that, in effect, it's creating a production line of sales. So, but you're arguing against that.
I'm arguing against it up to a point, and this may sound it's typical Andy, is now reversing. You need process. Somebody, a lovely lady called Charlotte, said to me, if you don't have a CRM system, if you don't have a process, and you've got 200-300 salespeople, you've got anarchy. So you do kind of need things that make it more capable for an organization to put their arms around what's going on. But I think, Tim, there's a threshold where you go, that's fine. Now you as the individual are our key competitive advantage. How do we put those things around you to make you have more time for humanity? And I think that's missed by huge amounts of people. Yeah. It's just not. Technology speeds people up, and because those skills aren't there, the competitive advantage isn't brought to bear, which is if Adam works for company A, Alex for company B, you for company C, you're the difference. You've all got Salesforce, you've all got LinkedIn, you've all got everything else. You're the difference. Why can't we actually embrace those people and go, how do I make Alex the most perfect version of him that he wants to be?
So how do we address this? Because this is a fundamental shift in how every business has ever gone to market. It's all been about, we're going to provide uniformity of messaging, the brand has to be protected, all of these things that assume that I care whether I buy your product or Tim's product. And I don't, because let's be honest, in almost all cases, they're all fit for purpose.
Yeah.
So I'm buying for a reason other than the fact that yours outperforms. And even if yours does outperform, the reality of the situation is that I'm only using 10% of the features and functionality of your product. And that's the 10% that's present in every single product out there. So why am I going to choose yours? And how do we educate organizations to see that they have to tackle this thorny issue in a completely different way?
I think there's going to be a few casualties before people really grasp how that they need to do it. There'll be pioneers, and they're slowly starting to come out. But people with continually large open recs that they can't fill, no talent coming in, continuing to corporately identify the problem and then ram a solution down everybody's throat. will eventually lead to a problem where you're not going to get those numbers, and therefore you will have to do something. And the burning platform will come around. And Farrett here, brilliant.
Yeah.
According to Wall Street article, 700,000 sales jobs advertised that no one's applying for. Therein.
Now is the problem there that that there are 700 open seats for open roles for salespeople because organizations are trying to drive growth, or because the performance of salespeople they have is so low because salespeople are using outdated modes of trying to sell to their audience, or is it because companies are so desperate to try to make their number they think the answer is just to throw more bodies at that? It's a problem, whichever. But
or is it the fact that remember that most people under the age of 30 have never worked in an environment where they had to, most of them say, if I quit today, I can go and get another job.
Yeah.
We did a podcast on the other Friday where I was talking to about some of the things that you could do, and people were going, "Oh, this is amazing! This is amazing!" It's like, well, this is what I did when I left university because there were no jobs.
Yeah, it was a recession, wasn't it?
And there was a recession. We had a massive recession. There was no jobs at all. You couldn't walk into a job. Whereas, my partner's 27-year-old quits because he could just walk into another job. And we're in this situation where we've lost the ability to go out and find a job. Or is there 700,000 vacancies because nobody wants to go into sales anymore?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. So one of the with the app that we're building in the institute, the lovely lady just turned around and said, "I didn't want to be in sales because I wanted to matter."
That hurts, doesn't it?
But it's true. I want to matter, and so if we're blunt about this, and looking at Alec, we all fell into a sales job. I did a geography degree. Kind of, it was great because they didn't have sat navs then, so at least I could find customers in Buxton and Derbyshire. But the reality of it is I fell into it and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it's great. But people unconsciously, consciously now, don't fall into sales jobs.
Yeah,
and it's this thing about purpose, isn't it? I want to have purpose.
Yeah, impact.
I don't want to be measured every 6 ways. Monday mornings, I must admit, I hated it. Still do. I don't want to be inspected by 17 different overlays and 3 different regional leaders as to what my number is.
Yeah.
I kind of like to just get out there and talk to customers.
Yeah, I was my happiest throughout my career when I felt I belonged to a business, to a team, and we had real purpose about what we were doing. And that helped to formulate my belief system as I started to become even more successful with that business. And that was a decade ago. And I, retained a lot of those things with me. But to see so many companies that don't value those things,
no,
they're really missing an opportunity.
And it's interesting. We did some work in a bit of research with SafeStyle, and I thought I'd asked some questions as an academic around ethics. And actually, the prof in charge of the centre here in Cranfield basically went, "No, what you've done is you've asked a bunch of questions around professionalism." And actually, the resounding answer was, "I want to be seen as a professional, and I want to work in an organisation that fosters me being a professional, and customers want to see me being a professional." And that's part of the problem, is that we don't develop, as a sales organisation, professionalism. It's a vocation. It's a short-term measured vocation, measured every year. Whereas you look at other parts of business, they're all looking beyond the year. Your marketing plan, Alex, is looking at you, is multi-year. Your financial plan is a 3 to 5 year rolling plan. And we support those individuals being the best versions, the best accountants and everything they could be. And that's really, I think, as we go through this, is how do we help? Because it's actually within the individual's gift. It's not waiting for the company to do it. And a great little case study that we can share is a guy with a small team has seen 8 people change their performance capabilities and behaviours by giving them access to their own learning and just trusting them to get on with it. Yeah. And he's seen 2 people go not engaged in it at all, not bothered with it at all, probably not the people that we need. And that's, I think, the key is, how do we help young people under 30, as Tim said, Just go. Actually, don't wait for your company. Do it yourself.
Yeah, and how do we show these people that this is a career? You know, oh, I fell into sales and I'm doing that whilst I'm working out what I want to do, or whilst I'm trying to get into marketing or finance or management or whatever. But to say, actually, now I've landed here. Because, you know, at the end of the day, sales, for all of its issues at the moment, is a fun place to be. You spend your time talking to people. And what can be more pleasurable than that?
No.
So we are at time. The first ever Sales TV, and thank you all very much for being part of this, and thank you to the audience, Amy, Jim, Patrick, Andrew, Jordan, Alistair, Adil, and Faik, all of whom commented. Fantastic, and everyone else that's watching in the audience. If you'd like to, sorry,
don't forget Jordan commented.
Did I not say Jordan? Oh, Jordan as well, especially Jordan. If you would like to come on as a guest, or you know somebody that you think would make a good guest, please ask them to reach out to us. If you'd like us to discuss or explore a particular topic, please let us know. Ping one of us during the week and connect with us, obviously, on LinkedIn. You can also join our LinkedIn group to keep the conversation going between these. But this is going to be a weekly, regular event, and we would love you to be part of it. So until next week, thank you all very much indeed, and see you soon.
Have a great one. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Cheers all.